and this is Greek lexicons, grammars, and reading aids. This session assumes that you've had a semester or two of biblical Greek and want to go even deeper in learning the language, and we'll do that by looking first at lexicons for building vocabulary and better understanding what particular words mean and how they're used. We'll do that through looking at grammars in accordance and how to access them. And then we'll talk about Greek reading aids. What are a couple of different tools that can help you as you read through the Greek text. So I will demo in each case of these some resources that will apply to that category. So I'll use BDAG for lexicons, but whatever we're going through on BDAG will work for your lexicon of choice. We'll use Reading Koine Greek by the late Rod Decker for our grammar. And I've got actually 4 resources. We'll use all of these for the Greek reading aids. This will also, as time permits, we'll spend a little bit time talking about how you can do targeted vocabulary acquisition within accordance. As time permits, I've got a section on that at the end. This handout that you see on the screen is available to you in your GoToWebinar control panel. As you logged in, you see the control panel, and that gives you a link to the PDF that I'm showing. If you're registered for today, you'll also get an email with the recording and the handout. And if you're watching this, came to it from YouTube or the website or something and didn't sign up, feel free to email me at abramkj@accordancebible.com, and I'd be happy to pass this handout on to you. If you have questions or comments at any time, you can use the questions section of the GoToWebinar control panel. I will check that from time to time. I may not respond right away, but I will respond to everything, either privately or in public. With the whole group, I'll anonymize your comment and share it if that makes sense to do. Let's start with lexicons, and we're going to look at BDAG first. Bauer, Donker, Arndt, Gingrich, Greek English lexicon of the, let me get the full title here. This is why it's just called BDAG for short. A Greek English lexicon of the New Testament and other early Christian literature. And that title is instructive. It generally does focus on the New Testament, but you'll see lots of other Greek literature cited here. So I'm just here in this entry for Christos, which is the last place I had it open to. And you can see there's a wealth of hyperlinks here. And many of these, I hover over them, and the instant details highlights what's, it basically pulls out a preview of the hyperlink. I could click on these to open them in a new zone. But you'll see there's a lot of New Testament references here, not surprising. But as you go on, you'll also find that you've got references to things like the Apostolic Fathers. You'll have Septuagint references and other Christian literature. But we're going to start with BDAG and use that as a way into this session with improving our Greek. So with lexicons, the thing I want to show you is this search entry area here. You can, of course, browse through a lexicon, but if you think about how you do this in print, you're most likely opening a lexicon to an entry. Maybe you're using an index. The search entry area lets us do all of those things, whether it's a scripture index or looking up a word, or maybe you even want to look up a translation equivalent. This search token here allows us to search either Greek entry or English gloss, that would be a translation equivalent, scripture. There's a number of fields here. We'll go through a few of them. But let's start with Greek entry. That's probably the most immediate use of a lexicon, the thing you might think of first. And so I've got BDAG open. So starting over here in my library, type in BDAG. Double click it, open, and it's here where I last left it. But let's say I want to look up an entry. Let's do agapao, the verb for love. So I go to the search entry area, and I will start typing on my US keyboard. So I'm typing the letter A, G, A, P, and then W. But what I'm seeing is Greek characters on the screen: alpha, gamma, alpha, pi, omega. Accordance knows that this is a Greek tool. It knows when I'm going to Greek entry that I'm looking for something in Greek, so it's going to automatically convert the letters from English into Greek. By contrast, if I were looking up English content and looked up love, L-O-V-E, it keeps the letters in such a way that I can search it in English. But Greek entry, agapao, and I'll go right to it. Now, if I didn't know the exact spelling of this verb, or if I got to agape and maybe I didn't know how to find the Greek character there, I could make use of this quick entry option that's happening. So I'm just starting to type alpha, gamma, alpha, pi. All right, so I have 3 options now. This is not quite like the autocomplete option that a search engine has if you're on the internet. It's similar, but in that case, it's determined by an algorithm, or what do people commonly search. This is determined by actual words that are in the lexicon under the search field that I've selected. So there are 3 Greek entries that start AGAP, and they are agapao, agape, and agapetas. So I love, love, and beloved. So quick entry is helpful because if you get stuck on how to spell a letter, I need the H there for the theta. But if I didn't know that, it wouldn't matter because the quick entry will often fill in some details for me. Same thing too with Christos, or take any word, zao for love. You get options that will jump up onto your screen basically as a drop-down menu, but they're only options that actually exist in that lexicon. So what's helpful about that then, for example, is I know that if I'm studying love, I can tell just by typing in alpha, gamma, alpha, pi, that there are 3 words that start that way, and I'm probably going to want to look at all of them. So I can go to whichever one I want. I'm just going to go to agapao here, and then that takes me to the entry. There's a lot about a BDAG entry to understand. I will briefly go over that. I think I'm more interested in showing us how to use lexicons in general so that you could do this with another lexicon, but I'll give just a brief overview of BDAG. And there's also a wonderful article on how to use BDAG by Rod Decker. I'll come back to that in a bit. But you can see here that not only are there abbreviations and hyperlinks, but there's a numbering system that we want to make sense of. It begins with the head word or the entry, agapao, and then it gives us what are called principal part forms. So here's the imperfect, the future, the aorist. Now these are not all of the inflections for the future. You just get agapeso, so you get the first person future, first person singular future, indicative, and so on. So here's the participle, pluperfect, and so on. So you get an idea of how this word is spelled. And what's useful about this is that you can see here that the alpha lengthens in the aorist, for example. And so you're maybe not surprised then to see this word spelled like this elsewhere. So that's really concise. It's abbreviated here, but hovering over any of these will give you the abbreviation and the instant details. So what you're getting here is some morphological information, some information about how the verb inflects. And again, it's not complete, it's not thorough, it's not meant to be. It's just meant to give you a sense. Like here with this future, I don't have a lengthened alpha, but I do have this sigma that gets added to the end of the word before the ending. And so that's enough to kind of know what the future looks like. And then you'll get some abbreviations that you might need to look up, and you know, maybe it's not even in English in some cases. You've got some kind of immediate bibliographical information, but after that is the first meaning of the word. So that's a full-on definition, and that's number one, and then it subdivides into A, and then after A comes alpha. So it's not like a Roman numeral outline where you get Roman numeral 1, capital letter A, number 1, lowercase letter A. It's got its own system. So you get the number 1, the letter A, the letter alpha. So these are all, you could think of these as indentations. But here, I would just start, if I were reading this entry, what I would do is start with the numbers, the definitions, and helpfully BDAG puts that in bold so that you can just glance through this. So there's number 1, to have a warm regard for and interest in another. Here's number 2, to have high esteem for or satisfaction with something. And here's number 3, to practice or express love. So there's a more almost a more active component there, rather than just a state of being or how you feel or think about a person. It's how you act. So those are 3 different definitions, and then where these verses come in is these will be examples of agapao used in this sense. Now that is interpretive. It, you know, BDAG, you may do a deep study on agape and think that, well, this reference in Romans 13:9 actually fits better under the 3rd definition. I find this, it's a very reliable lexicon, but it's not infallible, and there is interpretation involved. But generally speaking, I think it's trustworthy. So you can feel pretty confident that the kind of love mentioned in Romans 13:9 is going to pertain to this meaning, and so on. After the definition that's in bold, there is bold and italics, and that's the translation equivalent, also known as the gloss. And there's a search entry field for that too, English gloss. We'll come to that in just a moment. But the entry is agapao. The definition is have a warm regard for and interest in another. The translation equivalent then is cherish, have affection for, or love. You can see with the 2nd definition, a translation equivalent would be take pleasure in. For the 3rd, prove one's love. The first one is a good example of how these are different. So a definition is fuller. It is giving you a not necessarily concise, but as accurate as possible, a definition of the word. The translation equivalent is for what do you do when you're taking a verse with agapao and moving it from Greek into English. You would not, for example, if God so loved the world, God so agapao'd the world, you would not translate that as for God so had a warm regard for and interest in the world that he gave his only son. You would look for a translation equivalent, and that's what is set apart in italics here. As someone who's translating from Greek into English, I find this very useful. I want both the full understanding of what the word means, and I want some ideas on how to translate it. Now, agapao is not a difficult one. I think even folks who may not have a whole lot of Greek knowledge, maybe if they've been in certain environments, have just picked up this word along the way. And so the word love for translation equivalent, it may not require BDAG for you, but in other cases, I think this distinction will be helpful. So you've got a definition, a translation equivalent. If we were kind of reverse engineering this search, and I'm just going to duplicate this tab and go over here. Let's say, so that was looking up agapao as a Greek entry, but now that we know how BDAG works, we've got English gloss, that was in italics. We've got English definition, that was in bold, not in italics. Let's kind of think backwards. Maybe what I'm doing is thinking from English into Greek, and maybe my thought is, all right, I want to see all of the Greek words that could be translated as love. Now, how this helps with our larger purpose of improving our Greek is that this is a great way to learn vocabulary. It's not a list from a grammar. It's not, you know, kind of marching through a lexicon. It's thinking about, okay, what are some other love words? It's a nice way into vocabulary acquisition. And in BDAG then, I can search for love. I just want to make sure I have the right entry. That's not it because it's in Greek. So let's start that again and let's just think that through. Let's start with English gloss. So I'm going to search for love. You see the quick entry there gave me some other options, but I want love. And what I expect then for this search, because it's English gloss or translation equivalent, this should show me anytime in BDAG that the bold and italics have the word love. So agapao will come up in this search. The question is, are there others? And the answer is yes. In fact, there are 17 times where a translation equivalent of love exists in BDAG. I just need to scroll up to see what word this is, agapao, sure enough, and that's right where we were in this other window. So that's as expected, but there's more. We won't go through all these, but I can advance by clicking the down key here. There's that third definition that's still in agapao, and by the way, you can toggle open this content sidebar just to be tracking on the left what word you're in. All right, so far no new information. We're still here at agape. All right, so here's another place where love is in a translation equivalent. That's worthy of love, still based on that agape word. Pro agapao, still the same thing. Here's one, stergo, to have a benevolent interest in or concern for, and then love, the translation equivalent. So there's another Greek word, and I could go down and I'll see more Greek words. Here's Philadelphia, love of brother or sister. And again, this is a good way to kind of cluster things together when trying to learn vocabulary. Maybe you've learned agapao, but why not take it as the opportunity to learn 3, 4, 5 other love-related words at the same time? There is, in fact, a lexicon that is organized that way. This is Louw-Nida, and it's called the Greek English Lexicon of the New Testament, based on semantic domains. And so it groups things together by theme or by content. So if I go to love here, of course I can go to agapao. Let's start with that Greek entry. It exists as 3 entries, but it's part of a larger category here, attitudes and emotions, which subdivides into love, affection, and compassion. And here, helpfully, it groups agapao with some other love-related words. So here's phileo, here's Philadelphia will be in there, and stergo that we saw. These are all words that have to do with love. And it's a particular lexicon, again, for vocabulary acquisition. I just think this is a creative way to do it. This is maybe a little bit more congruent with how a young child might pick up a language, that if you don't know a word for something, maybe you know a word that's in the ballpark. And so Louw-Nida allows you to do that just because it's listed that way. But even if you don't have that lexicon, you can do something similar by wondering, okay, what are all the love words? Well, I'm going to start by searching English gloss, and you could extend this to the definition. Maybe you want to see where love is in the definition as well. It's just one time here, but you have some options for searching here. There's one other search entry field that I want to highlight here, and then we can pause for questions or comments if you've got them. So I've got agapao here. I'm going to see John 3:16 in this list somewhere, and so maybe another way to think about this is I look up a word, I see a verse, and then I want to see, all right, where else is that verse mentioned? Or maybe I'm reading through a section of text, and I just want to know, what does BDAG have on this section? Let's say I'm doing a study of John 3:16. you can change your search entry area to scripture specifically. Type in your reference, John 3:16, hit enter. I get 11 hits, and I'm going to open up this content sidebar so I can see where I am. So here's apollumi, which has to do with perishing, or which means perishing. Let's see, we've got another word here, gar, so that's just 4, so that's the first part of that verse. We have another one. Scroll down here to see what it is. You get kind of a lot here. We could also just scroll up this way. Cosmos, world. So you can make your way through the different words in a verse this way. You can also just open up the Greek verse and triple click from the words. We'll do that in just a moment, but I wanted to start with the lexicon itself and to say that, yes, you can do what you can do in print in accordance, which is to go to Greek entry and look it up. And you know, the equivalent of kind of thumbing through a lexicon would be using this content sidebar here. You've got the letters, and then you can expand into particular words. So if you just want to browse it, you can do it that way too. So anything you can do in print, you can do in accordance. And then basically what you would have to use an index for in the print edition, you can do with a targeted search in accordance, and it's much quicker. So you're taken immediately to all the places where the word love occurs as a translation equivalent, or a certain scripture, or even maybe there's a journal that you're looking at and you want to search bibliographical references in the lexicon. You can do that. And it's worth playing around with these different search entry fields. They'll vary a little bit. You'll notice Louan-Nida has, I think, 1 or 2 fewer search entry options, but by and large, they're the same. Of course, the big difference here would be domain. So you can actually search a domain, and that's just the theme. Looks like I'm getting just numbers there, but different lexicons will have different ways of searching them. But when you open up a lexicon on its own, that's really the first question, is what search field do I want to use? And it may be that more often than not, you're in Greek entry, which is why it's first, but you may also have other ways that you want to search it. Let's pause and see if you've got questions or comments. I'm going to stay with lexicons for just another moment or two, but we're going to do it from having the biblical text open. But let me see if you have comments or questions. Somebody asked if the Moulton grammar exists in accordance. I don't think we have that. I believe that's been requested before. And so if, I'm just trying to look this up, I'm almost sure we don't have that in accordance. Yeah. But you would not be the only one who would be interested in that. So you could go to support.accordancebible.com. Let me put this in the chat for you, and it's under, there's a feature request section that you could go to. You could probably even see, yeah, here we go. Let me just put this URL in the chat right now, and if you wanted to go here and add your voice in support, I think this is the same thing, Moulton and Milligan, that you're talking about. But yeah, it's not there for now. But you can see here in the handout, if you follow this link, you can get all of the Greek lexicons in accordance. All that I did with that was I went to a web browser, accordancebible.com, and typed in Greek lexicon, and you'll see here that there are quite a few options. I'll put that in the chat as well. That's also in the handout. What other questions do folks have? And while you think about that, let me transition now to beginning from the biblical text. So you may not be starting from the lexicon. You may be reading the Greek text and need a lexicon. If you go to your settings or preferences if it's an older Mac, or preferences on Windows under the edit window. It's a little different depending on your machine, but I'm on a Mac. If you go to your settings or preferences, under amplify, it's the second from the top, your triple click default, you can set it depending on language. For Greek, you can see the lexicons that I've got installed. Pick the one that you are most likely to use. I tend to toggle between mounts just because it's so concise, and I usually, if I'm reading a large passage and just want kind of a quick translation, mounts gives me that. BDAG is much more robust, but whatever you want for your default. And then you can triple click. So here's agapesen, here's that lengthened alpha here at the beginning. I'm gonna triple click it, 1, 2, 3, and it takes me into BDAG, agapao. And then maybe I see enough there, I can go to theos, triple click, and it goes right there. Anagene, same thing. It's very quick here, so that you can just look up words whenever you want to, and then you can close this and keep reading, and then you see another word you might need, triple click, open it up in your default lexicon. When you do that, by the way, there's another setting that you just might want to make sure you have turned on. Include reference when amplifying from text to tool. That's checked on mine. And what that did was I triple clicked from apestelen in John 3:17, and it gave me apostello in BDAG, and it used another search field, namely scripture, to find John 3:17 if it was mentioned in the entry. So that's good because BDAG can get very long. I mean, if you just scroll down here, this entry is still going, but I can see the John 3:17 references highlighted. I don't even have to scan across all this to look for John. It's done that for me in the search. Now, not every word will happen like that. So theos, I triple click it. There's a lot in theos, but John 3:17 is not mentioned. How about pistuo? John 3:18, it is 4 times. So I would want to scroll down or just advance by hit, and it takes you to that part of the entry where that verse is. So this is a really specific way of helping you to contextualize your vocabulary. You're reading from a Greek text, triple clicking into a lexicon, and this happens not just with BDAG, but whatever your default lexicon is, you can get that word, and if there's a scripture reference, you can have it search that at the same time. We'll move to grammars next, but what other questions or comments do you have on lexicons, especially if there's a lexicon you're curious about that I haven't covered? I mean, we have a number of them, but I wanted to use BDAG as kind of a sample. All right, let's talk about grammars, and we'll do this the same 2 ways. The first way being, how do we make use of a grammar by itself? And then the second will be, how do we get to a grammar from the Greek text? I want to highlight reading Koine Greek. I've hyperlinked it here in the handout. This is an excellent grammar, in my opinion. It has some of the standard features you might expect, like chapters that group things together. So I'm just learning about 2 cases in chapter 2 of nouns, 2 more cases in chapter 3, pronouns, verbs, adjectives. In accordance, you can also expand, or you can hide or show the contents here and expand and collapse these triangles to get as detailed of an outline as you want in the table of contents. I don't know if you've seen some books, especially more academic literature, will have 2 tables of contents. One will look something like this. It will be the simplified table of contents. And then the other will be called detailed table of contents or annotated or something like that. And it will have all of these expanded, basically. Some books will have both. Well, you get to decide how much level you want to see here in the table of contents. When I get a new resource, this is one of the first places I go, is I just want to see what all is here. and you can spend some time doing that. But you'll see here that this, like other grammars, is organized by chapter, by theme. It also has, at the end of every chapter, some vocabulary. It's got frequency counts. So you get a sense of, all right, this word occurs 109 times. I want to make sure I know it. I'm going to see it a lot. You also get frequency counts for the Septuagint, which is helpful. And this is one thing that sets Decker's grammar apart. It is still covering the New Testament, but he keeps the Septuagint close by, and even the Apostolic Fathers. So you get more examples. I think what's especially advantageous about that, I remember my Greek professor and my Hebrew professor, for that matter, saying that when you take a grammar, or when you take a class, and you know the verses in English, it makes translating not as effective for you, because you might just catch a few Greek words and be able to rattle off the rest of the verse because you know it, and that's great. But for translating from Greek into English, sometimes it's better for the work of translation if it's material you don't know. And so I think that's some of the reasoning with Decker, including the Septuagint and the Apostolic Fathers. Maybe the theory is folks are less likely to know that stuff by heart than, say, John 3:16. And so that's in here, both in terms of vocabulary, but also he's got reading passages here. There's audio that comes with it. This is just a really well done grammar, I think. So I could say more about it, but I'll just look again with you at these search fields. It's similar to the lexicons in the sense that you can search this now in multiple ways. So if we go to lexicons for entries, here we go for titles. Those would be like chapter titles or any big headings. And so maybe I want to brush up on the dative case. And this is where the quick entry is helpful. I can see here that there is dative. If I were searching for the participle, same thing. I'm just going to look up the dative and see what I get. 4 hits. And again, you can navigate along here to see exactly where you are. And you can go up or down by hit. So you see the title in chapter 3. This counts as a title because it's a heading, so 3.9. So that's the part of chapter 3 that gets into the dative case. Examples of the dative case, and then dative occurs as a title again later on in chapter 7. So this title search is a great way if you're coming to a grammar looking for a particular, maybe I've all but forgotten the pluperfect, or maybe I never learned it. Well, you just type that in and you get right there in the grammar. In the same way, you can search this grammar by English content. So if the 4 headings on pluperfect weren't enough, you can go to English content and see everywhere that word is mentioned beyond just the headings. So maybe you want all the charts that include pluperfect. That wouldn't be a section on the pluperfect per se, but it would be mentioned. So you could broaden your search that way. And you can also do a scripture search here. So if, for example, I want to see, did he address John 3:16 in here at all? I can just type it in. And there it is with some early Greek reading. Got 3 hits. So I've got, this is under, let's see, modifiers. So this is a now you try it section. And so I can scroll up and see what this is. And then I've got another use of John 3:16 here. Whatever your passage is, you could maybe do it by a whole chapter, John 3. You could do it by a whole book. 350 uses of John. Is Genesis mentioned in here at all? 223 times. You can see he really does include the Septuagint. So that's another good way to get into a grammar. If I were, for example, getting ready to read through the Psalms in the Septuagint, just as part of my preparation for that or along the way, I might go to this grammar and see what Decker's got here. And now he's only got 19 hits. That's not going to take me very far for 150 some Psalms, but anything that you're looking at in terms of your reading, you can just look it up by reference in this grammar and other Greek grammars. I hyperlink here to other Greek grammars that we've got. Those are the search fields, similar to with BDAG, how you use the search field to maximize the lexicon. You can use the search fields to maximize the grammar as well. You can even search it by page numbers, so that if you're doing this in a course setting with other people, I mean, chances are you're going to get assigned a chapter or a sub chapter at a time. But if the professor says, turn to page 221, you can get right there this way too, and that's especially convenient. That's something you couldn't do with most ebooks. You could do it with a PDF if you happen to have one, but Accordance recognizes that you may be doing this in a setting where you want quick comparison to the print, so you've got the page numbers there. Similar to what we did with the lexicons, it may be that you are starting from the Greek text and not starting from the grammar. And so maybe the question is, how do I see what grammatically might be relevant to me from this particular verse? Now, we saw that I could go to my grammar and I could just go to scripture and type in the verse. And I could keep doing that, but there's an even more consolidated way, and that is to go to add parallel, info pane. We've got a whole webinar on the info pane, so if you want to get more into this particular feature, here under webinars, you'll find that recording. But there's a number of categories here, one of which is grammars, and that's the category I want, at least for now. If my goal is to read through some Greek text and brush up on my grammar. So what it's done here is it's titled here info for John 3:16. So any reference to John 3:16 in my library will be pulled up here in the info pane. And it's done that with the BDF grammar, with Harris, with Mounts, Reading Koine Greek, and so on. So essentially, it's taken all of these grammars, as we did already, and it's toggled it to the scripture search field, and it's typed in John 3:16. To be exact, equals John 3:16, because in Accordance, if you don't type in the equal sign, it will give you John 3:16 even if it occurs in a range. So Decker didn't do this in this grammar, but if he had said something like, here's a common grammatical feature in John 1 through 4, your search for John 3:16 would come up, but that wouldn't be about that verse per se. That's what the equal sign will do. And that's what the info pane is doing. It's searching for equals John 3:16 in your grammars, but it's doing all of them all at once. And now you've got the results here. We talked more in the info pane webinar about different ways to navigate these results, but I'll just show you one. I'm going to hold Command, and we'll go to Harris here. We'll try a different grammar just to see. I'm going to hold down Command, or if you're on Windows, hold down Control. And while still holding that down, click on the image, and it will click it open in a new zone. It keeps the info pane there. But now I've got Harris, like I said, equals John 3:16, and then she's got two references there. You can click open the sidebar and see this is examples of finite me verbs in the Greek New Testament. And then there's another one that's just in the scripture index. So that won't be useful because we already know that's going to take me to where I already was. But as we advance through, these grammars are going to look a little different. So in John 3:16, I had 8 grammars showing, hit the down key. John 3:17, I only have 2 grammars showing. All that means is that I just have 2 grammars that have John 3:17 mentioned as a reference. Much more of them have John 3:16 mentioned, which is not surprising that that would be a kind of standard example. But I can go here, here's Wallace, hold down Command or click on Windows, and there's just one hit. There's John 3:17, but I might just see what he's talking about here. He's talking about passive constructions. And so that's a great way as you're reading through to just brush up on your grammar, kind of learn it as you go, do it in context. It will probably be fewer and farther between the Accordance user who opens up the grammar and reads it through, although we exist. But as you're reading, if the goal here, as we've said in the webinar, is working on going deeper and learning the language, chances are you're reading through some biblical text. And so you may be coming to the grammar more often in a contextual way like that. And that's where the info pane comes in. I've linked here in the handout again to some of the other Greek grammars. You might even just start by going to your library and type in grammar and see what you already have. You might have forgotten something was included in a collection you got, or something you purchased 4 years ago and forgot it was there. And then you can also go to the store and see what we have. Many of the major grammars that are used in seminary courses, Accordance has. So I'd encourage you to check that out. All right, let's check in on questions. Yeah, here's a comment. Let's put this in the chat. Someone says, option click on a disclosure triangle opens that level and all levels below it. A fast way to expose details below a level. Yeah, thanks for that. So if I'm in BDAG, and yeah, it would be if you had run a search. I won't replicate it now, but if you had run a search and were, or in a grammar and we're trying to click your way through it, holding down option with click will get you right there, which is helpful when there's multiple sublevels. So thanks for that comment. Here's another question. Can you explain to us how to cite info from Accordance, whether Greek grammar, vocabulary, book citation, and PhD thesis, please, how to do it in a scientific and correct way? That's a great question. Let's go to Decker, and I'll just take a minute to do this. And if you're interested in more, feel free to ask a follow-up. But let's just take some text at random. What you do is you right-click, and you go to Copy As. So again, take the text you want, right-click, Copy As, and you want citation. And I'm just going to open up a text edit document and paste it in there, and that did not work. What it's supposed to do is paste the bibliographic information in there. Not sure why that's not working with that particular resource. Let's try another one. I won't spend much time on this because I know we want to keep going. Some reason it's not working, but what it's supposed to do is give you the quotation mark with the citation information. Let me use one that I'm pretty sure works. I think WBC is pretty consistent in this. Copy as citation. It's not. I need to report that as some kind of a bug because that's not working. But what it's supposed to do is give you the bibliographic information, and I'll just point you to this. If you go to your preferences or your settings, there is a citation section where you can adjust your settings, and somewhere in here, there's a place to even under bibliography is where it is. You can adjust it by SBL, Turabian, and I think that's what we have right now. So I would just go to citation and check your settings there. Go to bibliography as well, and that will let you choose between Turabian and SBL. I don't know that you could do like Chicago or MLA, but I'd start there. And I know that there's been some recent discussion about citation on the support website, so you might check that out for more. And feel free to, you could email me after if you want, abramkj@accordancebible.com if you wanted to talk more about that. All right, let's spend the rest of our time talking about Greek reading aids. Let me just check in. Okay, yeah, more formats were added in version 14. Okay, you do have Chicago style. Yeah, thanks for that comment. So more citation possibilities in Accordance 14. Okay, sounds good. Citation is working in Microsoft Word. So maybe it was just text edit. It should work in text edit. People use text edit, but let's try in Pages. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. I will have to figure that out. But if it's working for you, the person who asked the question, then that's great. So yeah, just the settings is where you want to go to play around with different options. And thanks for the comment too that Accordance 14 has more. Let's talk about Greek reading aids. Vocabulary and grammar is utterly necessary to reading, but we can get even more contextual than that with some of these aids that I mentioned here. One thing I want to point to is the Greek New Testament audio, which is available as a separate module in Accordance. And that will open up in parallel with your Greek New Testament text. So if I've got the NA28 open, I can go to Add Parallel, and I can open up the audio. It is somewhat buried in these menus here. So what I like to do is I will open up the Greek audio this way and then add parallel, and it will be right here as a recent module. So now you've got another sense engaged as you read through the text. There's a lot of white space here, and that's by design because all this has is audio for each of the verses. So I might just resize this. But now when I come to John 3:16, I can click on the audio icon.
Utos garagapesen hateas ton cosmon, hosta ton huion ton monogene edokin.
And then I can pause it. You can see here that in Greek, it's a little different with the Hebrew audio, but this particular file, it's called John 3, and you can tell by the length, this is all of John 3 right here. So these are essentially bookmarks. So it's the same file, but it's still split by verse so that if you don't want to listen to a whole chapter at once, you can just jump right ahead to a verse. That's a tool that I find useful because especially if I'm reading by myself, I might be prone to mispronunciation or not remembering how to do a word or getting stuck on a diphthong or something like that. The audio files are useful for that, and it engages another sense as you're reading through the Greek text. I also, to mention Decker again, I really appreciate his Koine Greek Reader. I think that's an excellent all-in-one resource. If I were going to get the most Greek help out of Accordance as inexpensively but still effectively as possible, it would be by getting this book, Decker's Koine Greek Reader. It is not very very pricey. I'm just going to type in Decker here. I think it's like $24.90. And this has pretty much everything in it. It's not a beginning grammar. That's his reading Koine Greek. So you would probably be pretty hard pressed to start with this. In fact, he talks in terms of review from the very beginning. So he's assuming that you've had some Greek already. But what this will do is it will help you with the grammar review without having to go through a whole textbook. So if I say, all right, my Greek's decent, but I'm really rusty on the grammar, I'm going to read through a 500-page grammar, that might work for a month, and then I might lose steam, or I just might not have the time for that. This is a really distilled grammar, essentially. I mean, it's not meant to be comprehensive, but every chapter begins with a grammar review. So he'll do nouns and case usage, and you'll hyperlink it to other grammars. Chapter 2 will do adjectives. Chapter 3, pronouns. And it's not very long. If we're looking at the article here, we just get a paragraph, we get a chart, and then we're on to the next section, which here is vocabulary. So he has grammar, he has vocabulary, which are the two things we've done so far today, and then he has reading. So he gives you a Greek text, and he gives you bullet point notes on it. He'll connect this to the grammar, even to the vocabulary, and then sometimes you can get a supplemental reading. You can see from the chapter headings that we've got New Testament readings. And then again, if you so know the New Testament that it's making it hard for you to do the work of understanding the Greek because you're just able to quote it from knowing it in English, he's got the Septuagint. and apostolic fathers, even the early creeds. So you can look at the Nicene Creed in Greek, and he's going to walk you through that. So I'm a huge fan of this book. I think I bought it twice in print, once in accordance. Never had it in Kindle, but it's really good, and just a great one-stop shop. It will help you review your grammar. It will help you with vocabulary. It will get you reading. It will guide you in your reading, and it will do more than just the Greek New Testament. It will put you into some other Greek literature as well. Let me mention two other tools, and then we'll maybe stop a few minutes before the hour so that we have time for more questions. Diagrams and syntax trees. This is reading at a more detailed level. So open up my Greek text, and these are easy to access once you've got them installed in your library. Go to Add Parallel, and there's a heading called Syntax and a menu called Diagram. I'll start with Diagram. This is a complete diagram tool available in Accordance. It's a separate module that gives you the Greek text in this format, and this requires maybe a little bit of reading or studying. There's easily available some free PDFs online. Randy Leedy is a name you might try. I didn't include the link to that, but if you just typed in Randy Leedy Y diagrams, you'll get different articles in even a video. But anyway, as far as an explainer as to what's going on here, you can find that pretty easily online. But in short, you've got a horizontal line split by a vertical line, at the left of which is the subject, at the right of which is the predicate, so the verb and all its modifiers, and then all the modifiers of the modifiers get branched down. And so you get something that actually, it looks a little bit potentially difficult like this. You may have to resize your window, but this is a great way to understand what's going on in this text, especially when Greek word order and English word order vary, or when you have case endings in Greek, but we don't use those in English, and you're just trying to figure out how stuff works together. This diagram tool is great. Similar to it is the syntax tree, which is another way of grouping words together. This has more to do, and I'm just going to make this bigger so it's easier to see. This has more to do with things like, you'll still have like the definite article, the specifier, you'll still get a subject, but this is more on the clausal level. So here's the complement, this is an adjunct, this is a part of speech, this is all the predicate, and there's a whole system here too that takes a little bit of understanding. If you go to the website, again, I'll go to Accordance, just type in syntax Greek, you'll find some explainers right on the page there. I think I hyperlinked this in the handout. Yeah, right there. So here, download Getting Started with Syntax from our documentation page. That's where you would want to go. I won't go through this now, but just to show you all of those, all that terminology is described here, as well as some special features that are in this syntax in Accordance. And then you get some screenshots. This is the Hebrew here. But you can get the sense of how this all works together. I would not necessarily have that open if I were trying to read 2 or 3 Greek chapters in a day, but if my goal were 3 verses in a day, I might really like to have both the syntax and the diagrams open and just look at these 2 different ways to make sense of the text. I'm going to leave this off for today, but just tell you that if you're interested in more targeted vocabulary acquisition, there's a hyperlink here. I'll just open this up in my screen to show you, and then we can use the rest of the time for questions. This is a fairly detailed article that I wrote some years ago that will describe how to use Septuagint to basically get your own tailor-made vocabulary list. So in the grammars, you'll get these lists that are organized by frequency, and that's great. And maybe that's all you need, but you can also set up your own in accordance. And I walk through how to do that. I mean, it's step by step. It's a lot of text here, but if you go slowly through it, I think you'll find something there that hopefully can help you if you want to generate your own list of vocabulary to start to work on. So I'll stop there. I'd love to use the rest of the time for comments or questions, but just to recap, we've looked at lexicons with BDAG as our primary example. We've looked at grammars, how to get in and out of them on their own and in context using Decker. And we looked at some Greek reading aids, the audio, the Koine Greek Reader by Decker, diagrams, syntax trees, and then I pointed you to this article here if you want to go further with vocabulary acquisition. I will check the questions box and make sure we're all caught up, and we have time for another few questions if you'd like to ask any, especially if you've been sitting on something that you're not sure about, just type it in there, and would love to respond, and then we'll start to move toward wrapping up in just a moment here. All right, I'm just checking. Okay. Good question. Does the GNT audio have modern Greek pronunciation? No, it does not. And I'm just trying to think of where it may say that on the product page. And I do recognize that's, yeah, I don't think there's an open and shut case for the so-called Erasmian pronunciation. And so greater minds than mine have waded into this territory, but yeah, this is, yeah, here we go. It actually says it explicitly here, Erasmian style pronunciation, so not the modern Greek. I know that those exist online somewhere. I couldn't tell you where off the top of my head, but not in accordance. If you do find some kind of resource online, I know someone shared not long ago a link to an audio Septuagint online. You may have noticed I've been using this web browser in accordance today. I would just look for it through there, and then, you know, let's say you find, I'm just going to do audio Septuagint. All right, and you know, I would check these out. I mean, I'm just doing kind of an unvetted search at this point, but let's say, I have no idea if this is good, but let's say it's good and I decide I want to use it. You can drag this over here into its own window, and then you can open up your own Septuagint text here. It won't quite be like what we had before, but if you use the web browser in accordance, that will allow you to essentially pair resources from accordance with whatever you find elsewhere. So you may think about that as another option, and so that, you know, if you wanted modern, or maybe you do Greek New Testament modern pronunciation. I'm not spelling that right, but you get the idea. So you can find that there. Maybe what you do is have your Greek New Testament here with the Erasmian pronunciation at right, and then modern here. Or maybe the Erasmian pronunciation feels like nails on a chalkboard to you, and you just keep this open and then use your web browser to access what you can there. My email, again, abramkj@accordancebible.com. Like I said, if you're watching this on a recording, feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to send you the handout. And if you're here live, you will get that sent to you in just a little bit this afternoon, as well as the recording.